It was a fairly high-end home, and it came with a Range Rover.
I'm thinking about selling. How much should I put aside, and how far ahead of time should I start putting money aside to sell?
That's a great question. Let's talk about in a minute, let's talk about the pieces that are the same with everyone.
Uh-huh.
There are some parts that obviously are variable, and those are usually around the getting the house ready for sale. You could be potentially putting out for staging.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely some repairs to the home. Very few homes are just fully 100% ready. So there might be some painting, there might be some repairs, some little things that have to be done. The landscaping, the prep, the cleaning, all that type of stuff. Those are clearly, variable depending on the particular home. The stuff that is pretty consistent for most people, realtor fees, and the taxes in Connecticut, conveyance tax. So usually you have a state tax and a town tax. And so they combined to a total tax. It varies. Every town is different. And even the price bracket that you sell has a factor on what the tax rate is. So it's hard to say exactly what that amount is.
Yeah.
And also in Connecticut, there is no set realtor fee.
Okay, so we have the realtor fees, taxes. What about, inspections and other costs like that?
Yep.
Does that fall on the seller or the buyer?
So inspections usually fall on the buyer.
Okay.
There are a few cases where the seller would want to do an inspection. Sometimes in a relocation, you do an inspection. It's part of the requirements of the relocation company. And it's not a terrible idea to do an inspection on a home before you sell so that you're aware of problems that might kill your deal later.
Okay.
In other words, the buyer comes in and sees, the house looks great. They're in love with it. They do an inspection. It needs a roof. A roof is $50,000 or it could be more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that potentially could kill that deal. That's not a great example, but there are cases where a buyer would find something on the building inspection and it would turn them away. You'd like to know that before you go on the market. So it's not a terrible idea, although I'll say most sellers don't necessarily do it. But it's nice to know what you have. The one thing I will say about inspections is I would not recommend most of my sellers go there and actually do everything on the inspection, because I think what you're going to find happen is the buyers are going to just ask you for something else.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And the inspector isn't necessarily worried about your you selling for top dollar. They're just doing their job of looking for issues.
Yeah.
Exactly. Interesting. So what are some of the other fees associated with the sale?
So a big, again, there are lots of fees that might come into play for a lot of people, but for most, it's the real estate commission, the conveyance tax in Connecticut, both state and town tax, conveyance tax, and then lawyer fees. But lawyer fees are relatively minuscule to the big picture.
And then what about marketing the home? Does that come with any costs?
Not usually, not unless the seller wants something really unique done that, has an abnormally high cost relative to the marketing we were planning on doing on the home. But for us, marketing's all part of it's basically covered in the real estate. The fees that they pay us pays for the marketing.
The marketing, okay. What would be considered, outside the norm
for marketing?
Yeah, in that term.
There was a home back when the market was much tougher. There was a home where the seller was giving away a car.
Oh my
believe
God.
it or not. Yeah. Clearly that's not going to get covered in the costs.
Yeah.
But it was a fairly high-end home and it came with a Range Rover.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
That's creative.
So that, when things are tough, you've got to get creative. It's funny that all that happens is a strategy changes in different markets. You change your approach. You're constantly adjusting. Yeah. It's always challenging no matter what it seems. So in that particular market, you're just trying to find ways to make that home. It really wasn't about the car. It was making it stand out to people. Oh, that's the one they're giving away the car.
Yeah.
Type thing.
Yeah. Make it hold a spot in their head. we're always talking about number one mind share.
Yeah.
It's essentially that.
Yeah. And negotiations happen later. If as a seller, the buyer's coming in at a number you don't feel like you can afford the $100,000 Range Rover, well, then that gets negotiated out of the transaction. I'll do your price, but I can't include the Range Rover for that number because that's beyond my scope, and then the buyer can decide they really want that Range Rover.
Yeah.
Probably not, honestly, but at least it did its job from a marketing perspective.
And brought them to the table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you like this video, YouTube thinks you'll like one of these.